listening to the Motherhood Experience, a podcast where you are part of the conversation with moms, for moms, and by moms. Let's jump into this episode with me, your host, Val Kleppen. Happy Tuesday. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to another episode of the Motherhood Experience podcast. Do you know when you meet someone and you just know immediately, I am really going to enjoy this person. I am really going to like this person. I might even stalk this person to see if I can get them to be their best friend. No? Just me? Anyway, that is how I felt with this week's guest, Lauren Jacobs. We had the best time connecting and sharing her motherhood story and all of her tips, and oh my word, it was such an amazing conversation. And before we jump into it, you know the drill. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all the places. Anytime you see one of our posts, it helps tremendously when you interact, either with a little thumbs up or a heart or sharing episodes with a friend. And as always, if you can leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts, that helps the podcast world know that we are legit and putting out content that people actually want to listen to. Thank you so much to those of you who have left a review and who are engaging with us on social media. I cannot express enough what that means. I had so much fun with my guest Lauren today. You can find her at cheerfulbaker.com. All of the links to find her website, her social media will be in the show notes, of course. You can find those for every episode. But I would just encourage you to connect with her as well, to reach out and let her know how much you enjoyed her episode, because I can just guarantee you're going to enjoy it. She was such a gem, so much fun to talk to, and you're about to find out right now as we launch into this episode with the Cheerful Baker, Lauren Jacobs. It's not every day on the Motherhood Experience podcast that we get to talk with a cheerful baker, but that is exactly today's episode, where I'm joined with Lauren Jacobs. Lauren, welcome to the Motherhood Experience.
Thank you so much for having me. Motherhood is my most favorite job, so this will be fun.
I love to hear that. And we start every episode with ages of kids and stage of motherhood you're in, so why don't you fill us in with those details?
Well, I'm a new empty nester, so it's my least favorite stage of life I've ever been in. My oldest son in 5 days will be 23. I can't believe that. And then our youngest son is 19.
Oh, wow. So when you were younger, was being a mom one of your aspirations, one of your goals, or did it become your favorite thing after you became a mom?
I always wanted to be a mom.
Did you?
Always. Oh, I've always loved children. I had a very maternal, wonderful mom. And when my husband and I got married, we found out that our chances of becoming parents were less than 6% because of some medical issues with my husband. So whenever I found out that I was pregnant with Caleb, who's the oldest, we thought it was such a miracle.
Yeah.
I mean, we really did not have any hope that would happen naturally. And it did. He came along, and then we thought, well, we have our one precious baby and there's no way it's going to happen twice. And it did. We got little old Joshua. So we
and
feel
their names
extremely
are Caleb
blessed.
and Joshua.
Yes, from the Bible.
That is so precious. Oh my goodness.
Yep.
I love that so much. So what was it like then being a mom to little boys?
Fun. So much fun. I mean, I believe, Val, that God gives you what you're supposed to have.
Oh,
And he knew, I had an older brother. I don't know if I'm a full-fledged tomboy, but I wasn't a girly girl. And I would rather be, out in the mud, out in the garden, riding the skateboards with little boys. Now girls do that too, but I think plus boys love their moms. I mean, there's just something special about the bond between a son and their mother.
Why do you think that is? Because I would say that's true, and a daughter with her father also. But why would you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, that would be something to ponder, because you do hear that all the time. maybe just the difference of, the different between a male and a female, and maybe you're drawn to the opposite to try and get some wisdom.
Yeah. What was it like, or maybe you're still in it with sons who are dating?
Oh, that's a challenge. That's a challenge because in your mind, you know what the type of woman that you hope your child will find.
Mm,
And they don't always find that person when they're young because they're not looking for the same things in a partner that you're looking for them.
right.
But my husband and I both believe this, that our kids are good kids and they're wise and they're going to choose someone who makes them happy. And it doesn't have to make us happy. It
Mm,
needs to make them happy. And, so far they have really done a good job. I mean, my oldest is at this stage and he does not have a girlfriend right now, but it's weird to think that some of his friends that he graduated from high school with are married. And I think, I can't even imagine him being married. We're super close. So he calls me every day and I think I'm going to soak that in because someday there's going to be a girl who's going to replace those phone calls.
yeah. Yeah. How old were you when you got married?
Oh gosh, I was 31.
Oh, you
I
were?
was, I was, was I 31? No, 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 no. I was not. I'd have to ask my husband because he's the date person. I'm the creative one. I think we met when I was 28. I was probably 30.
Okay.
I was older.
Okay.
I kissed a lot of toads. I did until I found my husband and we met on a blind date.
Really?
So,
Who set you up?
yes, a woman. I used to be a sales rep for American Greetings, and I was in charge of all the merchandisers that would go into the stores and put up the cards. And everybody tried to fix me up because they were afraid that I was gonna be an old single lady, and they didn't want that for me because they knew that how much I love children, and they're like, Lauren has to meet a man because she needs to have some children. And this wonderful woman introduced me to Stacy. He went to church with her daughter. And I thought, oh gosh, not another blind date. But I'm not kidding. When I met him, I knew that there was something special. And within 2 weeks, I thought, I'm going to marry him. And I
Wow.
did 25 years ago.
Oh, that's amazing.
It is.
It was after you got married, or did you know ahead of time that your husband had health issues that might?
No, it was after we got married. His thyroid does not work.
Oh.
And he did not know that. And so it affected his swimmers. And we couldn't figure out why I couldn't get pregnant. And he didn't realize that he had a thyroid issue. But during the search of figuring out why it wasn't happening, they discovered that his thyroid didn't work. So they put him on thyroid medication, but they said they still didn't think I'd be able to become pregnant.
Wow.
But, I did. God had those plans written.
Absolutely.
So it happened.
Absolutely. So you have these two boys, then you always wanted to be a mom. What were some of your favorite things to do and ways to spend time with your boys when they were little?
Anything creative. In fact, it's so funny. I often think I'm your typical creative person, Val. I'm messy. I go through life fast. And my husband is the opposite. He like his you should see the difference in between our closets. Like I'm looking at it right now. His is perfectly in line and mine has clothes everywhere. And that's kind of how we go through life. So I would get out the glitter and stuff and he'd just have to walk out of the room because it would make the biggest mess. But that's what I enjoyed the most, really, was, we would paint, we would do clay, we would do pottery, we would cook. I homeschooled them for years, and those are memories and experiences that I would not ever have taken away. Those were the most special moments because we did the field trips together. We decided where we were going to come, and we'd build forts and do school underneath blankets under the table and just crazy things, which I have an extremely close relationship with both of my boys. And I feel like a lot of that is because we just spend so much time together.
Yeah. So I'm a homeschool mom, and
That's wonderful.
I swore I would never homeschool.
Me too.
Yeah, I had some preconceived notions about homeschoolers, and I think this is our 8th year of homeschooling.
I had the same preconceived notions, and I loved school, and I thought, why would you want to homeschool your kids? To me, that just seemed odd. I thought, I don't want to do that. But then our oldest son was just struggling so much in school, and I would help him over those hurdles. So when he couldn't learn his alphabet, I figured out creative ways to teach him. When he couldn't learn to count, I found touch math, which is very tactile. And, we would hop around the house spelling words, throwing balls back and forth to each other. And one day when he was about 7, I took him to Virginia Tech, which is where I graduated from college. He was probably 8. And I said, oh, Caleb, wouldn't it be fun to go to school here one day? We went to a football game. I said, this is where Pop graduated, and this is where I graduated. And he looked at me, Val, with these precious little eyes and said, I could never do it.
Oh.
And that is, I called my husband on the way home and I said, we're taking Caleb out of school. And it was a hard thing to do. There was a lot of crying from me saying, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But gosh, within a week of taking him out of school, he was the happy little boy that he was before he started school. And I knew it was the right decision.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was, like I said, so many incredible memories are tied up in those years that we spent together.
Do you think that your boys are at least open to, or maybe even have talked about planning to homeschool their kids one day?
I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't want to do that, because I know that they look back on those times with very fond memories, because they went to public school in high school, and Joshua started his last year of middle school because they were both athletes and they wanted to play sports, and you couldn't do that in the state of Kentucky. So they didn't enjoy school as much when they had to go to school every day. They liked the flexibility of being at home, and I loved it. I don't know that I could have taught them in high school. I mean, that's a whole different thing. I got up through, now they went to a Latin school, which was a homeschool co-op for years. So that was homeschool with help, which was great. So I homeschooled them solely, and then they went to the Latin school, and then they went to public school. So my kids know Latin. That's kind of a cool, useless thing, but still cool.
Did you have much of a homeschool community, or were you kind of flying solo when you were teaching your boys?
When I first started, I was, it's really kind of cool, Val. I was an art teacher in a little private Christian school where my oldest went to school, because they needed an art teacher, and I was staying home during that time. And I thought, oh, I'm the kind of person that I can look at anything and come up with an art project. So when I decided that I wanted to, and Caleb was not in school yet, so he just went with me. And then when I decided that I wanted to homeschool, I called them and I said, do you have an extra set of curriculum? Because I was familiar with it because I taught there. And they said, you know what, Lauren, we have one set. We had a child that was supposed to come and they ended up not coming, and you're welcome to have it. And, I don't believe in coincidences.
No, ma'am.
I believe in God instances. And that was what really told me that was the decision that I was supposed to make. And then I found a great co-op, and we did co-op, and, just made friends within the homeschool community. And I realized that homeschoolers are cool and fun. And my preconceived notions that I know your listeners know what we're talking about were completely wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Completely wrong.
Absolutely.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to do that one day.
Do you ever think about or talk about with them their future and you being a grandma, or those kinds of conversations?
No, I
No?
don't want to put those thoughts into their minds. No, we don't talk about that yet. I think that they're too young. I mean, if my oldest did have a girlfriend for a little bit and he asked me my opinion, um, he said, "What would you think if I married such and such?" And we did talk about that. And I mean, the first thing out of my mouth was, "You're way too young." And he said, "No, no, just down the road." But we're kind of just trying to live one day at a time and get them through college.
Yeah.
I can't wait to be a grandmother. I mean, I've already thought about what my name's going to be. It's probably going to be Cookie, since I make
Oh,
cookies.
I love that.
And that'll be fun. But no, I hope that that's many years down the road.
So, and we haven't touched on, well, I mean, I guess indirectly we have, because you've mentioned several times that you're a creative individual, but when did that creativity really start to just become second nature to you? Have you always had a knack for being creative? Did you have to stifle it as a kid, and then one day you were like, forget this?
I've always been creative, and my parents really encouraged both my brother and I to do whatever we wanted to do. So if we wanted to take, drawing lessons, they'd find a class, or if we wanted to do flower arranging, just whatever we wanted to do. So I was always, always creative. And then when I went to college, I majored in clothing and textiles because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I should have done graphic design or something like that, but it's hard to know what you want to do when you're that young. But then after I graduated from college and I worked, a real job in retail and then in sales for American Greetings, I wasn't creative because it wasn't creative. And I ended up, a friend of mine called me one day, and my brother's a minister, and she worked as his, I can't think of what her title was, but anyway, she worked with him at the church. Her name's Lanier. She called me one day, and this was probably 15 years ago, and she said, "Lauren, I just went to the most amazing party." And I said, "What was it?" She said, "We all sat around and this woman came and she told the story of someone in her family who, I don't remember now if they had an illness or something that was going on." So she shared this, but it was a very uplifting story of how God had gotten their family through this. And she said, "Then we painted paintings with scriptures on them, like a pear with the fruits of the Spirit." She said, "You need to do that." And I'm like, "Oh, do I really?" She said, "Yes, you need to do that because," and this is for another whole conversation, but my nephew is truly a miracle, that his story is a miracle. And she said, "You need to go share Davis's story and you need to teach people how to paint because you know how to do that." So the more I thought about it, I thought, that's kind of a good idea. So I did it because I'm that person. I'm the person that just jumps in. So I invited a bunch of people over to my house. I got a bunch of painting supplies and we painted some paintings and I told them this story. And then I started doing that until I found cookies. So that was really neat.
Okay, so you and I, Lauren, have never spoken before we hopped on this call. And I'm sitting here basically falling in love with you. And when my son was born, I lost my job, actually. And I had just, I don't know, maybe 3 months prior to that, I went to a painting party. There was no story involved, but it was just a painting party. And the gal said, like, "If any of you can see yourself doing this, come talk to me after. I'm not an artist. I just follow instructions." And I was like, wait a minute. So I went up and talked to her and I was like, "Well, I'm not an artist, but I love parties and being the center of attention. And I could totally follow instructions." And so I became like a painting party person.
No kidding.
And I went in our local coffee shop. This is back when I lived in North Dakota. Our local coffee shop let me come in and we did a coffee and canvas, I think is what we called it, or I can't even remember. But once a month I'd lead a painting party in the coffee shop. And
Is that right?
yes, so I'm just like, oh my
That's
goodness.
crazy.
But I think that you're more creative than I am, but I am very much the messy, disorganized. I love to look at things, but as far as executing on the creativity, that's not my strong suit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you probably have a cleaner home. Like my office right here, the back, I mean, it's pretty, it's organized. And I'm looking in front of me, like, here's my closet, and then here's all my art supplies. And there's a lot of them because I can't throw anything away if it's art related.
Yeah, I have that problem too. Okay, so that's fun. So, what other ways then did you express your creativity? What did you find that really brought you joy?
Well, when I was doing the painting parties, my kids were young. I mean, really young. So I was the room mom because that's when they were going to the Latin school. So they would go to school a couple days and then we would homeschool. They went to school 2 days. They were home the rest of the time. So I was the room mom, and I wanted to have these great parties, because I'm creative. And I looked at Pinterest all the time. So I thought, oh, there's decorated cookies at the parties. We have to take those in for the kids. So, because the classes were really small. I mean, there were like 8 kids, so you could do really, really fun things.
Sure.
And I attempted to make decorated cookies, and it didn't go very well because I had never done that. And I baked my whole life, but I had never made decorated cookies, and I didn't know what I was doing. And there was not much out there on the internet because this was, over a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
So my husband and I like spread the icing on the cookies. I mean, it's hilarious when I think about it now. And I thought, okay, I'm never decorating cookies ever again because it took so long. But Joshua loved them. It was for my youngest. It was Valentine's Day, and we made these little whale cookies, and we put a little sign that said, I whaley love you. In fact, I think I put them out. I think they're still there on my Instagram account. You'll have to go look because they're hilarious looking.
For sure.
But probably maybe a year after that, and maybe it wasn't even that long because we've already determined I'm not really good with time, right? In years. I saw a friend of mine on Instagram post these really pretty cookies. And so I called her and I said, how did you learn how to do that? Because I would love to do that. I've tried it. It didn't go over very well. And so she told me about an online class, and she said, Lauren, you're already painting. She said, it's just like painting, only you use icing. She said, I think you'd really like it. And I thought, yeah, that sounds like fun. So I took one class, then I took another, and then another, and then another, and I loved it. Because the thing I like about cookies that's different with painting, because I was also painting paintings that were going into a shop and being sold. And that's a lot of pressure.
Oh, wow.
There's no pressure with cookies because if you mess one up, it doesn't matter. You have another one. You eat it.
Yeah.
You give it to someone.
Yeah.
So I just really enjoyed the freedom of doing that. And at the time, my oldest was really, and that's saying it, that's an understatement, really struggling in school because he has very severe dyslexia, and the way that his brain works, there were things that he was incredibly gifted in. It was like this. And then there were other things that were incredibly hard for him. And so that was a really, really difficult time because I homeschooled him. I mean, we sent him to so many different schools and tried everything possible. And as a mother, when your child is suffering, you are suffering. And I was suffering because he was suffering, and we had tried everything, and he just was becoming more and more depressed and felt bad about himself. And I needed something to get me out of this incredible funk that I was in. Mm-hmm. And cookies did that for me because, there's a lot of joy in doing something for someone else. And what I was doing at that time was making cookies and giving them away to people. And that, it was fun for me because it was artistic. It was fun to see the happiness on people's faces when I would take cookies to them. I took cookies to the school all the time. So that started my journey to joy, and that's what I'm still doing today. People say, aren't you tired of decorating cookies? And no, I'm not. And that is surprising. I mean, really, after almost a decade, when I have new designs, I think, oh, I wake up and think, I get to decorate cookies today. So that tells me that I've found my
Oh,
calling.
wow. I am one where I could bake cookies all day, but when it comes to applying frosting in any sort of structured capacity, I'm so over it.
That's how I am with cakes. Like I make fancy cakes for my kids on their birthdays.
Mm-mm.
And I've had people say, will you make a cake for me?" I'm like, "No," because the icing, buttercream drives me crazy because it's sticky and it won't wash off your hands, and oh, I don't like that. But piping icing that you use for cookies, I mean, you hardly, I mean, you really don't touch it. It stays in the bag. So, but yeah, I get about the frosting, and I'm not a big fan of that.
What about your boys? Do they like baking or do they like frosting? I mean, I guess they're older now, but I'm still talking about them like they're little. But did they
They
enjoy?
No, I have the craziest, healthiest children. My my boys love to cook, but neither one of them eats sweets. I mean, they're so funny. I think, how can you be my child? They eat broccoli.
Oh, wow.
They'd rather have a piece of broccoli than a cookie. I don't know how they can live like that, quite frankly, but they do. They love, both of them absolutely love to cook. And the older one, because he's older, so he has more experience, is an incredible cook. I mean, he's in college to be a police officer, but he comes home and he cooks dinner for us. And I think, oh, you need to go to culinary school.
Wow. Well, good for them. I mean, that makes my heart a little bit sad,
Me
but
too. Me too.
but good for them.
But I'm hoping for a grandchild that likes to cook.
Yeah.
I mean, that likes to bake.
Did you have a hand in teaching them how to cook at all? Did you spend much time in the kitchen
Yes.
with them?
I love to be in the kitchen. I mean, it's so funny, Val, because I don't like to bake. Are you surprised to hear that? I like
Yes.
to cook. I like the artistry of the cookies. Like if I could have someone else bake the cookies for me, I would love it. Every time I have to make cookie dough, I think, oh, I have to make cookie dough today. It's just not my love. I love the artistic part of decorating the cookies. But I love to cook. So they grew up, I was in the kitchen all the time. Either decorating cookies, making the dreaded cookie dough. Now I know I've perfected that. I know how to make a really good cookie dough, but it's not my favorite part. But I love to look through cookbooks and find new recipes. Do you like to cook?
I love to cook. And I grew up in a household where my mom, even still today, she hates cooking. And so I started cooking round about seventh grade, I'd say. I took a home ec class and it kind of
Uh-huh.
opened up this whole new world for me. And
That's neat.
I've been cooking and baking ever since. I was thinking I could bake your cookies for you. You can decorate them. I just see this great partnership going. But also,
If only we lived a little
I know
closer.
we're quite a ways away. But I really want my daughter to learn to cook, and we have been working on it, and my son too. He'll ask to help me, and I'll just be like, "Of course you can help," but really, my heart's like, I'd rather do it myself. But was that ever an issue for you?
It wasn't for me because, like I said, I never minded making messes, so that was fine. Now I've told this story so many times, but it just is so ingrained in my brain. When I first started decorating cookies, Joshua was, I don't know, probably 7 or 8, and I remember him coming in the kitchen one time and he said, "Mommy," I mean, he's the sweetest thing. He said, "Mommy, do you need help?" And I said, "Oh, no, I don't need help. I'm doing these for someone else." And so he left, happily. But I've thought of that so many times and I thought, why didn't I give him a cookie and a bag of icing? Because he didn't want to decorate cookies. He wanted to be in there with his mom,
Mm,
you know? So any listeners, don't be afraid of the mess because one day you're an empty nester and it sneaks up on you. So,
yeah.
messes can be cleaned up. But I'll tell you some things that you can do in the kitchen with your children that will be really fun.
Yes, do.
Okay. So, I was really fortunate that when I was growing up, my mom baked and cooked with me all the time.
Mm.
If she hadn't done, if she hadn't laid those foundations, into my life from a very young age, I don't think that I would have the career that I have now, quite honestly. But here's some of the things that she taught me. And she taught me by doing these things with me. So the biggest, and this is such an interesting thing because I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who has cooked and baked her whole life. And when I'm getting ready to share with you, she's like, I've never heard that before. So do you know the proper way to measure out flour for a recipe?
Oh, well, I know the way I was taught, but now I'm second guessing if that was proper.
Well, how were you taught?
I was taught that you scoop it into the cup and you take a butter knife and run it down the middle and then flip it on its back and level off the cup of flour. I
You are
did it.
correct. That's great. Either do that or weigh your flour on a scale. But you know what, and I'm so surprised because I've asked so many people that question, and you're literally the only person who said the right answer. So you'll have to call your mom and thank her.
Oh, that was my home ec
podcast.
teacher.
Oh, okay. Well, thank your home ec teacher. But a lot of people just scoop the flour out of the bag.
Yeah.
And you get 30% more flour if you do it that way because it compacts.
Wow.
So I'll often hear people say, oh, my cake didn't turn out, my cookies didn't turn out, using the same recipe that I used to use. And I think it's probably because you're doing something wrong. Not wrong, but you're not following the rules of baking because, baking is a pretty exact science.
Right.
So that's the thing about flour. You always want to make sure that you use really good butter. That makes a difference. And I didn't know all this before I started baking, but different butters have different percentages of butter fat. And so I like to use challenge butter because it's delicious. And I love it because my dad grew up on a dairy farm. And so, I grew up eating delicious butter, homemade butter, homemade ice cream from my grandparents. So I know what good butter is supposed to taste like. And challenge butter, they've been around since 1911. And it's made from a co-op of dairy farmers in California. And that just reminds me of the story of my own dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's fun. But one thing that a lot of people don't think about as far as butter is concerned is when you're baking, you should use unsalted butter because it can really make a difference in your recipe. It can be too salty if you use salty butter or salted butter. And then you also want to make sure that your butter is room temperature. And this is where your child can help because if you're like me and a disorganized baker, when you're taking if I decided right now that I wanted to bake cookies, do you think I have softened butter sitting out on my counter?
No, ma'am.
No, most people don't. So there's a couple things that you can do to soften your butter. One is you can take your butter out of the refrigerator and have your child give them a butter knife and have them cut it into cubes because that's fun. I mean, you give a kid a little plastic knife, it'll cut through butter, but they're not going to cut their finger off. They think it's the greatest thing in the world. So have them cut the butter into cubes and it'll come to room temperature a lot quicker. Another thing that you can do is you can warm a glass. And what I like to do is I'll take the glass, I'll pour hot water into it, let it sit for a minute, pour the water out, and then you can put the glass over the butter and that'll bring it to room temperature. Another thing that's good for mothers, especially frustrated mothers, is you can take your butter and you can put it in between parchment paper and you just take your rolling pin and you flatten it out. I mean, you just bang on that butter. And if it's flat, by the time you flatten it, it really is at room temperature. So that's a good stress reliever, when you're a mother. The challenge butter has 80% butter fat, which is a really good percentage. So I never use store brand butter. I just use challenge butter. It makes a difference. And then the other thing is to make sure that you cream your butter and your sugar for long enough. A lot of people will just put them in the mixer, mix them up just for a minute, and then put in their eggs, which need to be at room temperature also. But it's really important to cream your sugar and your butter for about 3 minutes till it gets really good incorporated. And then to make sure that your eggs are at room temperature. And you put those in, because if they're cold, sometimes it can seize up the butter.
Sure.
So using the just those little tips, it really does make a difference in how your baked goods come out. And a lot of those tips are things that my mother taught me. And so it's great if you can get your kids in the kitchen. I think also if you can allow your kids to make messes, make brownies. I mean, we didn't make fancy things when I was growing up. We made brownies and we made chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah.
But I learned the basics by doing that. Then it gives them more confidence to feel like they can bake and cook when they're older because they know the basics.
That's so wise. And I would only add to that to say, when you make the messes, it's a wonderful opportunity to embrace a teachable moment, because our children need to be taught how to clean up those messes. We can't just assume that they will know how to clean them up. That's actually something they need to be taught.
That is very, very true.
Ask me how I know.
And I wish I would have done more of that, Val, because I'm a I'll do it myself kind of person.
Yep.
You know, so I didn't let my kids clean up enough messes, honestly. And luckily they're fine.
Yep.
But I was worried when my first one moved out of the dorm into his own apartment. I thought, oh my gosh, is he gonna know how to clean this? Does he even know how to clean a toilet? And I thought, Lauren, why didn't you teach him how to do all that stuff? He was fine. He's fine.
Oh, wow. So do you have any like favorite recipes? I know you made brownies and chocolate chip cookies with your mom. What are some of your favorite recipes that you either made with your boys or serve to them now?
Well, I was really fortunate. I was on the Food Network Christmas Cookie Challenge, and I had to develop a recipe, which is hilarious because I was a one-hit wonder. Like, I had a really good cookie recipe, and people would often ask me, they'd say, do you have any other flavors? And I'd say, no, because this one is delicious, which was true, but it also was because that was the only recipe that I had, and I had figured out how to make it really good. So when they contacted me and said, Lauren, we want you to come and be on the Food Network, but you need to bring your own recipes. We're going to need a recipe book of your recipes. I think they needed 10. And I'm like, oh, no problem. I thought, I don't know how to do that. So I bought a book on the science of baking, and I made 10,000, I think, batches of cookie dough until I found something that I really liked. And the Food Network is really big on stories. So my dad was a farmer, and he grew up, when I was growing up, I had a patch of strawberries behind my house, and my mom's favorite thing in the world is chocolate. So I came up with a chocolate covered strawberry cookie recipe.
Ooh.
And it is delicious, but it was a nod to my parents, and it was so good. And one of my most proud moments was Ree Drummond, the pioneer woman.
Yeah.
Loved my cookie. I mean, she loved it. In fact, she carried it off with her. She said, I'm just going to take this with me. And I thought, oh, that's incredible. So I have that recipe on my website. It's in the blog sections. You can find it. But my kids, that, like I said, they really don't like sweets, but they do really like that cookie. And then the favorite thing to cook, I'm going to give you my mom's secret recipe. Okay. It's so easy. Is beef stroganoff. This is my favorite food in the whole world. You take stew meat and you cut it up, and you put in a can of cream of mushroom soup, a packet of Lipton onion soup mix, and then you fill the can with red wine. You can use cooking wine, but it makes it really salty, so we use regular wine. And then you put it in the crock pot and you cook it on low for like 5 hours, and then you put it over egg noodles. It's heaven. It is the best, easiest recipe.
And that's it. That's
that's
simple.
probably my kids. It's so easy. My kids love that.
I mean, you can get those ingredients anywhere too. It's not like you have to plan special ahead for those.
So easy. when I went away to college and I would come home on the weekends, my mom would always have that. So part of it is that it's delicious, but I think part of it is all the memories that are associated with that recipe.
Right. The nostalgia.
Yes.
Yeah. So was it the painting that, and then you discovered the cookies and you took the classes, but like, how did it become your career? How did you end up on Food Network with it?
Well, when I started decorating the cookies, I had no plans to sell cookies. I just thought that it would be fun. But then somebody asked me that I worked with, she said, my mom's birthday's coming up. Would you make some cookies? I'll pay you for them. And I thought, oh, okay, that sounds good. So I started doing that. I would take orders and I really enjoyed it. And then, my kids were getting a little bit older and and then they were going to public school because, like I said, they played sports. And I just wanted to be at home. I didn't want to work anymore. And so I started thinking, how many cookies do I have to decorate in order to, and I just took this little part-time job because I wanted to be where my children were because my son, like I said, was struggling. So I thought, how many cookies do I need to make to be able to replace my income? Well, it was more cookies than I wanted to make. So I didn't want to do that. So then I started teaching classes, which I loved. So because I had done that with painting, right? So I thought I can teach cookie classes. So I did both those things for about a year until I was making the same amount of money that I was making at my teaching job. So I retired and, really had no big plan, had no big plans. I was just going to make my little bit of side money doing this. And then, I can't remember how many years before COVID that was, but when COVID happened, I took this class online about how to do better at Instagram. So I started making cookies and lollipops and macarons and cakes and everything that you could possibly do because I was stuck at home, and videotaping all of it and putting it on Instagram. And so I was contacted through Instagram by someone, a talent scout for the Food Network. Because I put videos out, like 3-4 videos a day because I was bored, right? I was stuck at home. And I thought that it was really fun. I really love video production. So she contacted me and said, have you ever considered being on the Food Network? And I kind of laughed because I thought, this is not real. And it was, it was real because they saw some cookies that I had made. And anyway, they contacted me. And so I was really fortunate to be on the Food Network. And then during that time, I started thinking about everything that cookies had done for me in my life. Giving me these incredible opportunities that I just would never have had I not picked up that icing bag. And so I thought, I really want to teach other people to do the same thing. And so I started a cookie cutter subscription box. And so I've been doing that now. I think we're going on our 4th year. And so it's a box of cookie cutters and a class, because a lot of times you'll find cookie cutters that you love, but you'll have no idea how to decorate them.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to make it easy. So it's a class, a set of cookie cutters, a stencil, and it all comes in this really cute box. And so that's primarily what my source of income is. But then through that, I've been able to do incredible things like working with Challenge Butter. Over Christmas, they had this incredible program, this fundraiser where you could post cookies online and they would donate money to raise, or they would donate money for childhood cancer research. Mm-hmm. So I got to go on the news. In Nashville and in Florida and Kentucky and talk about how to raise money for childhood cancer. That was such a gift to me to be able to do that. When you can take your skill and what you love to do and truly help somebody else, that just brings you a lot of joy into your life. So had I never picked up an icing bag, I would not have had this incredible relationship with challenge butter. So, yeah, it's really, I look back on it and I think, how did this get to be my life? And the cool thing is I'm 56, I think. Yes. I think, am I going to be 57 on my birthday or 56? Well, I found my true calling and my passion in life when I was in my, mid to late 40s. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's been a fun ride.
That's amazing. What would you say to like orchestrating cookie parties or something where maybe homeschool co-ops or just moms and their kids could get together and have a big cookie day? How would you go about orchestrating that?
You know what? It's funny because when I first started, I remember a friend of mine asked me to come do her child's birthday party. And I think he was turning 10 and all he wanted to do was decorate cookies. Real creative kid. I'm like, okay, sounds good. So I had in my mind what we were going to do. Because I was teaching adult classes. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take these little flowers because he wanted to do flowers. We're going to do tulips. We're going to do blah, 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 blah. I took the icing bags. I took the whole thing and I was going to sit down with these precious children and teach them how to decorate cookies. That wasn't what happened, right? Every one of them turned the tulips into Pac-Man ghosts. It was the coolest thing ever. They were so creative. And the lesson I learned from that was take the cookies, take the icing, let the kids have fun.
Yeah.
You don't have to orchestrate anything. You can buy, I found out recently, we have I can't remember the name of it, but it's a store where restaurants can go and buy things. And at Christmas time, you can go buy cookies there. Now they're kind of like, they're not the real clean cookies that I would use to decorate. They have some spread to them.
Yeah.
Kids don't care. Find a place in your town that sells to restaurant. You might be able to find cookies and then either make royal icing or you can go to Michael's. You can buy icing and lots of sprinkles and just have fun.
That's that.
Just have the things there and you will be amazed what these precious children will come up with. You'll hand them a star and they'll turn it into a rocket ship and you'll think, how did you see that in there? Yeah. The kids can do that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. I might even be inspired to host one.
Good. You can do it. I'm going to hold you accountable.
No, don't do that. See, this is a running joke with me and my friends when they say introvert Val is going to be really upset that extrovert Val made those plans.
That is hilarious.
Oh, it's an ongoing conversation. But that is such a neat idea, though, to just, rather than think that you're going to teach the kids a meticulous way to do it, to just let them go for the memories and have fun.
Absolutely.
Instead. Yeah, I love that so much.
So one thing that I've always done with my kids at Christmas time is we've decorated a gingerbread house. And the reason I bring that up is it's so funny because I have pictures of every single year to look at the difference of the years. When they were real little, they would be real creative. They want to put all the candy on it. Then when they were teenagers, I remember one year, my youngest son came over his friends came over and I bought them all a house. And because I don't make gingerbread houses.
Let's clarify. You bought them all a gingerbread house.
Yeah, I bought them all one of those kits, at Walmart. Yeah. And all they did, Val, they karate chopped the top of the house off and poured candy into it. And now it's hilarious. And they just squirted the icing on each other. Then as they got older, now, they're getting a little bit more into it. But it is so funny to see how that has changed year from year.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay, so there's two more things I want to ask you as we wrap up here. One is I always like to end the episode kind of with how you would encourage other moms. So let's say from your heart to theirs, if they are maybe not the creative type, or if they are struggling with making those meaningful moments and those connections with their kids, especially in the kitchen, what would you say to encourage those moms?
I think you can find activities that you can take your child to that'll still make the memories. Um, that would be one thing. Like, y- you know, like I said, I don't like buttercream icing. The other thing I don't like is like clay and Play-Doh. I just give me paint all day long, but I really don't like that. So I would take my kids to a pottery studio because I just didn't want to do that with them,
Mhm.
and they loved it. And those are wonderful memories that I didn't create. I just took them there. But I think also, every mother has some wonderful skill that they can pass along to their child. And it doesn't have to be creative. It can be reading books if you love to read, reading books with your child. We read books with our youngest son until he was in 8th grade. He would come and lay in bed with us and listen to us read books to him. That was just such an integral part of our relationship. And we loved it. So I think you just think, what do you want to pass on to your child? Children don't care. They don't care what you're doing. They just want to be with you.
Mhm. I love that so much because it's so practical and resourceful, and it takes so much pressure off that you don't have to be the provider of every single detail of every single memory
That's
or
right.
moment to have with your kids. Lauren, I love that. Oh man.
And you know what's so fun? I just thought about this. So Caleb's getting ready to turn 23. So last year when he turned 22, guess what he wanted to do for his birthday? We went to the pottery studio and made pots. I didn't even think about that until now. Yeah,
Oh,
me and my husband and his uncle and aunt and his brother. That's what we did because that's what we did when he was little.
that's so
And he was
fantastic.
22. So,
Yes. Oh, I love that. And so, how can I'm sure other listeners have just come to adore you during this episode as I have. So,
oh,
how can they follow up with you, follow you, learn more about you, all of the things?
I have a website. It's cheerfulbaker.com. And then I'm on Instagram. I'm the Cheerful Baker. So those are the two main ways.
Okay. And where can people find Challenge Butter?
Um, your local grocery store, hopefully. But yeah, you can find it because it has an elk on it and a beautiful mountain scene in the back. I mean, if I could dive into that packaging for a vacation, that's where I'd go. But if you want really good recipes to make with your children or your spouse or whoever, you can go to challengedairy.com. They have great recipes. And one of them that I just recently made, I mean, the way to my husband's heart is definitely through food. And I made him on the website. They have these cookies, these butter shortbread cookies that are also made with walnuts. I think it's walnuts. Maybe it's pecans. I think it's walnuts. And then you put raspberry jam in the center of them.
Ooh.
I'm not kidding you. They are one of the best cookie I've ever eaten in my entire life.
Oh, wow.
So,
Well, I am so grateful that you were willing to be a guest on the Motherhood Experience and walking us through your story of motherhood and your story of becoming the Cheerful Baker. Lauren, thank you so much.
thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Motherhood Experience podcast. To join our exclusive TME community, head over to themotherhoodexperience.com/learn more. Be sure to follow the Motherhood Experience on Facebook or Instagram, and please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment below, and we'll catch you next time.